Hi, I'm Clint Wells, and I'm a musician in Nashville, Tennessee.
And I'm Katie Featherston, an actress in Los Angeles.
And we've got a new podcast called A to Z with Clint and Katie.
That's right. Every other week, we go through the alphabet, highlighting the films, music, culture, and experiences that have shaped us.
Plus, our happy hour hangouts where we shoot the shit, read listener emails,
and drink wine out of coffee mugs at 8 in the morning.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, so come hang with us every other Tuesday.
And don't forget your wine mug.
Hello and welcome to Happy Horror Time. I'm Tim Murdoch.
And I'm Matt Emmert, and today's special guest is the star of the most successful and highest grossing found footage franchise of all time, Paranormal Activity. Not only has she appeared in 5 of its 7 entries, she is literally the face of the series, as you cannot think Paranormal Activity without thinking of Katie, the poor girl from the original film who gets possessed, turns into a demon version of herself, and then so effortlessly snaps people's necks in all the sequels. We are so excited to welcome to the podcast a true icon in the horror genre, the one and only Katie Featherston.
Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be here. You guys are awesome.
Thank you. Really are you kidding? We are happy to have you on here because you really are an icon. And when we say like the face of Paranormal Activity, by the way, does that like bother you if people say you're the face of a horror series about demons and ghosts and stuff?
I mean, it's unexpected. It wasn't something I thought I would be known for, but no, I love it. I'm super proud of it. And, you know, it's all I have nothing but love for all of that. So I'm into it.
I'm jealous. I love it.
Tim wants to be the face.
I want to be the face.
Series. But Katie, before we even dive into all that, because we love kind of to take it back and we to the beginnings, and we read that you grew up in Texas and studied acting at Southern Methodist University. Can you kind of take us through how that all led to coming to LA and just like what you were doing in terms of acting before Paranormal?
Yeah, I decided in junior high that I was going to be a professional actress. I was a very shy kid, and I took this like speech and drama class, and it just hit me, and I was like, oh, this is my life now. So from then on, I was just set towards somehow having a professional career. Knew nothing, knew no one, had no idea what I really was going for, but was very determined. And then poured myself into it in high school and applied to a bunch of good colleges with good programs, got into SMU, loved it, had a great 4 years there, and was always like, I'm going to go to New York because New York's where the theater is. And then at some point I went to LA and I was like, but the weather here is nice. And I've never ridden on a subway before, and I like riding in cars. And also realized that I much more enjoyed the very like small, sort of the specificity of film acting, as opposed to having to be on stage and make everything bigger so you can reach the back of the audience. And then I was really excited to explore that kind of acting. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to go to LA.
And you only get one take in New York.
That's true. And then I came out with some college buddies and moved out to LA like 2 months after we graduated, and waited tables and did the whole thing. And knew nothing, still knew no one in school. And I think they're better about it now, but no one in my college was like, here's how you can set yourself up to be a successful business person in the industry. But no one was like, oh, hey, by the way, acting in Hollywood is an industry. Like, no, they're only talking about the art and the auditions.
Isn't that so interesting? Because I dabbled at Ohio State, and like, they don't have a class set up like get backstage, get headshots. Like none of that is all about the craft.
We had
the craft.
Yeah, we had a craft. There's no craft if you can't get through the business of it. Yeah. But we had like a business and professional aspects class, but it was like put together a lookbook of what you think your type is or something like that, which isn't unhelpful, but it doesn't matter what my type is if I can't even figure out how to get an audition or know who to get headshots from. It's like there's everything kind of has to go in order. So figured it out on the fly, and auditioned for Paranormal Activity my very first year in LA. And
that was your first year in LA.
I was 23 when I believe we started filming on my 23rd birthday. So yeah, so I was 20. It was my first year in LA. I was 23,
That is like winning the lottery.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was going to ask about before Paranormal Activity, because I didn't know if you had done other things before. Like we looked at your IMDb and I saw some entries in there before Paranormal, but they were all like around the same time. So I didn't know how early in your time in LA you had done that.
I did I had some friends in Austin who did things, and I was like a small bit in one of their movies, and I did a short film, and there were a handful of little things, and I got like some non-union commercials out here, and there was I did audition for like a very low budget horror film that shot here in LA, and I didn't book the lead, but I booked like, girl who's trapped or something, like whatever her name was. And I coming from my theater background, I'm like, okay, and I create a whole character and I decide how she's gotten to this place and she's trapped in this chair and what led her to there and like what her backstory is. And I go through all of this and I show up and they like hand me the skimpiest outfit ever to wear. And I was like, oh, and she's like, yeah, you're a hooker. And I was like, oh,
hooker who's trapped.
I
Sorry.
love hooker who's trapped.
And I was kind of like, this is something you probably should have told me before I booked this job, because I'm not going to wear this. And I was like, I'll wear this and I won't wear that. And so we figured it out, because I was like, it was like ridiculous. And I was like, we're not going to
like, what are you selling with this?
Like growing up, were horror films on your radar? Like,
yeah, were there any ones that made an impact on you, like as you were growing up?
Candyman, Tony Todd.
Wait, say it 3 more times, please, in a mirror.
Into the mirror.
Don't even. There's a mirror behind me. Don't think I'm gonna do that. Candyman. I mean, I loved being scared. I wasn't allowed to see a lot of scary stuff until I was older. But I always wanted to be really scared. And Candyman was the closest thing that ever came to really frightening me. And my best friend and I would make her watch it with me on my dad's farm in the middle of the middle of the countryside or whatever. And we had a lot of good memories doing that. And we watched it on Zoom together. She lives in San Francisco now. Aww. So we all got together and watched the new one on Zoom and had a little
I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on the new one?
I thought it was really fun. I mean, I thought it was inventive and I really enjoyed it. I thought nothing will ever be scarier to me than Tony Todd, just because it hit me at such the right time, in the same way that nothing will ever be scarier than Darth Vader. I know that it's, it's like, because I was like 6 or 5 when I saw that, and it's embedded in me as scary. So I definitely missed Tony Todd being in it, and that
other than the one flash of him at the end.
But do you miss Virginia Madsen smoking in restaurants and smoking everywhere?
No, because the secondhand smoke of just being on that set must have been horrible. But I do remember liking that movie because it felt like a real movie in a real world, not like, hey, this is a horror film, so this is the neighborhood and this is the teenager kind of setup, but like, oh, this is just a city and this is a woman, in college, like a grad school student, and here's her husband who might be cheating on her, and here's all these, like, it felt very like real world, but then got scary, and I thought that was fun.
No, it was. I remember seeing it as a kid.
I didn't appreciate it when I was in 8th grade, but then cut to today, I really like it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being terrified to the point that like I wouldn't, even though I'd have sleepovers to watch horror movies, like we would never say the name more than like once or twice in front of a mirror. Like even though it's not going to happen, you still don't do it. Like, you know what I mean? It's embedded in you. You're not going to do that. But
yeah.
Anyway, so moving on to the original Paranormal Activity. Now, obviously, the making of this film is kind of like a rags to riches story, because I know the original budget was only like 15,000, then it went on to gross like 193 million. So I know you had said that the casting notice for this was a little unique, and that auditions took place in some kind of random theater in North Hollywood. Can you tell us more about what the casting notice said and just what the whole audition process was like?
Yeah, I remember I was house sitting for my high school theater teacher. He and his wife, they were out of town, and I was like scrolling through LA Casting looking for auditions, and I saw it and it caught my eye because it just felt very it felt like whoever was creating this project was very like they knew what they wanted. They were very serious about it, and that was exciting to me. And so it said things like, kind of work around the clock, a lot of improvisation, no script will be provided, and it had like disclaimers like there won't be any sex, there won't be any nudity, things like that. It was like, but everything else is kind of a go, you'll be scared. It was just very, it kind of felt like
Like
something,
it was detailed and like,
yeah,
they weren't trying to do a runaround and then
no, they were like, this is
outfit.
what we want. Yeah, I wasn't gonna that was not gonna happen.
This is your outfit.
There's like, by the way, here's the bikini you'll be wearing in this movie. No, it felt like somebody had put a lot of thought into it, and it felt like an exciting opportunity that was more than just, here is the one role you'll play. Like, and I think the breakdown just said like girlfriend, boyfriend. Like, it was very broad. And I was so excited by it. I was just really excited about it. So we had the auditions in like this tiny little theater in North Hollywood. And
can I interrupt you just for 1 second? North Hollywood back in 2006 was not cute. I mean, were you a little nervous? I mean, just like I mean, like North Hollywood didn't get cute till like 2013, 14.
That was not the scariest audition I ever went on in terms of like settings. And it was a theater, which felt familiar to me. So I was fine. And it was the middle of the day. It was like, it was chill. But I remember, I went in and sat in like the little waiting area or whatever. And there's all these women with their headshots like you do. And they would go in, and no less than 30 seconds later, they would come out looking frustrated, still with their headshots, and just leave. And I'm like, what is happening in there? Like, what is going on? And it was my turn, and I walked in, handed them my headshot, and I was like, hi, I'm Katie. And they said, hi, Katie. Tell me, why again is your house haunted? And I was like, oh, okay. And I just sat down in the chair and like got comfy and started making stuff up.
Had
and
they
it was
given
so fun.
you notice that like we want you to just play along right away?
No.
Oh,
It was
so
immediately like, can you hang? Like, are you gonna like get in your head and think through this? Or are you just gonna go with it? And so I
were you part of UCB or anything like that at the time?
No, I never. We'd had like one improv class in college but our improv class in college was not about being funny. It was about being committed to the moment, which in hindsight, I think is probably exactly the class that I needed. But I always.
Yes, and.
Yes and is good in any situation. Micah and I did a lot of yes anding.
Do you think the other girls like they sat them down and like, so why is your house haunted? And they're like, it's not. And they're like, next. I mean, no, but seriously, like,
what are you talking about?
Like, if they're like, what are you talking about? I'm here for an audition.
I think being so green and having had so few auditions and being from the theater, coming right from college, really allowed me to be open in a way that maybe I wouldn't even be now if I went into an audition and something like that happened, because I now have such a like preconceived idea of how things go, and I would have been maybe startled now. But at the time, I was so open and had so few expectations of what auditions are, what this industry is, or what LA is like, that I think that helped me for sure. Did
the directors tell you that you was going to use your first and last name? I mean, you're
what a great
acting,
question.
Of course, but it's like, obviously you're not with Micah.
And just so people know, listeners, like, I mean, we know these, but like the opening scene of Paranormal Activity, it does in like a found footage way say that we worked with the families of, it doesn't just say Katie and Micah, it says Katie Featherston. Like, it says your first and last name.
Yeah, it does. So the first name part happened like when I was 23 on, we were getting ready to film, and Oren, from the best place was like, hey, just, do you want to use your real names just so we don't ruin takes by accidentally using the wrong one? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And not thinking that this would someday be a huge global franchise, right? I'm just like, yeah, okay. It's not going to change my performance. You call me Michelle, or you call me Katie, or you call me Samantha. It's going to be the same thing. So yeah, sure, whatever. In hindsight, was that the best choice for me personally? Maybe not. However, it helped the film probably, so that's great. And then the last name thing is that they had to get my permission to do that. Paramount had to get my permission. And that was an example of me knowing that wasn't a good thing and not having anyone around me to be like, Katie, you're allowed to say no. And so if Paramount's like, hey, be a team player, like we really need this, and I want to be a team player, and I want to like not make anybody mad, because I was young and that's where I still was. Now I'm like, oh, you can be mad. We're gonna have boundaries here. But at the time, I didn't really have that knowledge or people around me who could kind of help me with that. And so I was like, okay, and was never super comfortable with it. However, it was a great lesson. And if you have a red flag and you don't feel comfortable with something, it's okay if people are mad.
Yeah,
that's really good advice.
I'm kind of skipping ahead, but did people come out of the woodwork that you went to like high school with and say like, hey, are you okay? Did you get killed by it? Because since they saw your full name, and maybe, again, I know Blair Witch had come, but like there weren't too many movies that used real people's full first and last names. Were there any dumb people that really thought something had
Not
happened?
that knew me. Not anybody who knew me was like, oh my God, you're in this movie. Cool. So no, I did have a few random people being like, hey, I think we're second cousins. I live in Wichita, Texas. And I'm like, I don't care.
23
But there are, which I've done, but I have not like done anything where you can find anybody. I'm like, we don't need to. But definitely that line got blurry for people who even people in the industry who obviously know it's a movie, but on some level in their head, they're not sure if I was acting. Like it's a weird thing that I even made a sketch about it years ago. But there is a weird blurriness for people sometimes, which is so funny to me, because it's like, well, it was a movie, guys. But I also understand that if you didn't live it and you're just seeing it and you don't really know someone, and it gets kind of.
And when you're seeing their first and last name.
Yeah.
So, we obviously saw the 2021 documentary Unknown Dimension, the story of Paranormal Activity, which was written and directed by a friend of the podcast, Joe Bandelli, who's just an awesome guy.
Joe
is
all around
the best.
Really, amazing guy. And also the documentary is available on Paramount Plus right now. You like that plug? And Paramount doesn't even pay us. I know.
They should give you some advertising revenue.
Exactly. But we learned that the director, Oren Peli, had filmed the first movie at his own house, and just the crew was made up of his girlfriend, a good friend of his, and a makeup girl. So what I'm just wondering is that, were you like, what was that shoot like? Were you at all hesitant to jump into a situation like that? Or were you just like, because you were new, just like, fuck it, I'm up for anything?
Well, we auditioned, we had the first auditions, and then in the second audition, Micah and I met and improv'd and everything. And so then after that, we got the job, but it was months before we actually filmed, because Oren wanted to kind of like fix up his house and make it a little more camera ready. And so in those months, the three of us talked a lot about what we were going to do, what the plan was, kind of, just to kind of get to know each other. And then Micah and I hung out a handful of times so that we would have a rapport going in. That was a little deeper than just one audition. And also we had to like dress the house. So we had to have like photos of, pretending we're a couple. So I remember we went to Venice Beach and like took photos getting ice cream and stuff, I
remember that film in the movie. You guys are like on the beach. Yeah.
So we had never, that photo, that was like a selfie we took at the beach in prep for the movie. So by the time we actually filmed, I didn't feel in any level weird about showing up to a house with two guys and Oren's girlfriend, who was lovely and was there the vast majority of the time. And so no, it felt like a super cozy, kind of like cocoon to make something amazing. Like it was most fun.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like so like, I guess I'm so close-minded. I'd be like, what's going on here? But I am like proud of you for being so open-minded.
No, but it is good. I'm sure there would be a lot of people that would be like, filming at their own house. No, what's going on here? But
no, the movie works on so many levels because you were so open-minded.
Yeah. In hindsight, I said this to someone recently, I was like, if my daughter was like, I'm going to go film a scary movie with a male director and a male co-star, the girlfriend will be there, they say, in their house for a week, I would be like, I don't think you are, honey. You're going to stay home. But I think the months in between really helped, because by that time, my intuition's pretty good. Oren was is a fantastic human being, and was and we had like a contract, like, there were things that it was clearly legit. And when you're with good people.
That's what I was going to say. And then we also know that there was no real script for the film. But so I was just wondering, when you would film scenes, how would it go down? Like, would he give you a topic to talk about? Were there certain lines or beats you had to hit? Like, how did that all go down for each scene?
So he had an idea of what he wanted. He had certain like scares that were for sure going to be in there, and sort of the arc of the movie in general. But we would know kind of what the goal of the scene was. Like, we're going to have an argument about the demon, or we're going to decide or not decide to bring the demonologist in, or we're going to have a cozy evening and a scary thing's going to happen. Like, we're establishing we knew what the goal of the scene was, and we would do it. We would just naturally see what came out. And then we would pick the parts of that worked, hone in on those. And we would take we would do like a 9-minute take, and then we do a 5-minute take, and then it's like, okay, great, we don't have time for a 5-minute scene. Let's do it in a minute and a half, and then would do it in 2 minutes or 3 minutes or a minute and a half or whatever, and condense it, and then when we all three, which was so cool of Warren, it wasn't just when he felt like we were good. It was like when all three of us felt like, yeah, we nailed it. Then we moved on.
Oh, okay. Now a 5-second version. Hey, demonologist, scary. Well, no, that's really cool. But at least I think it's almost like when you've already done the long version of it, you know, in your head, what are the beats I had to hit? So that's almost like the prep for the shorter version. I can imagine. I'm saying like I worked on it.
I know.
Look,
when
I did Paranormal Activity, Katie, I think, no. And another thing I heard, which I thought this was so cool, like little things I like to latch onto that I hear, especially in documentaries, that he apparently, I guess Oren said the original name he was tying with for the film was Captured, but that he had like a list on the wall of names that people could add like suggested titles to. So I have to ask, A, did you add any suggested titles to it? And B, do you remember any other titles that were in consideration?
I don't. I remember Captured or Capture or something, but then that movie came out with that same name, and we were like, ugh, we got to scrap that. And we had like kind of been calling it Paranormal Activity just as like a placeholder. And then it just sort of became the name. But I don't actually remember the list on the fridge or wherever it was. I might have contributed to it, but that is one of those things that has left my. See, I'm learning now. You're teaching me about it, which is great.
I just think it's so cool that he like had a list of like, hey, anyone have an idea for a title?
Throw stuff up there.
Paranormal Activity is so good. It's such a good title.
Well, but I guess it's so on the nose that it's almost like, you know how when you think of so I work in advertising, my real job. I mean, I know you must think I'm a professional podcaster, but I work in advertising, and sometimes like your first idea, which may seem the most obvious, is the one that after like weeks of brainstorming you come back to. And I feel like maybe that was how it was with Paranormal Activity. Do you like how I'm just creating narratives? I
think it's true. It's also the same when you're trying to find an outfit to wear in the evening. You put one on, you're like, I don't know if this is the one. You take it off, you try on 14 other outfits, you come back to the first outfit.
You always go back to the first outfit.
Half an hour of your life trying on clothes. So yeah.
So
and then your room's a mess.
You were telling me about my life right now. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously you worked with Micah. Did I say that right?
You did. They'll be so happy.
Oh, I know. Because if you've ever listened to the podcast, I mispronounce everything.
He's like Paranormal.
Yeah.
Activity.
Oh, it's terrible. I was going to ask, like, obviously you guys became close. Like, are you still friends today?
We are. He lives down the street. We just talked earlier this week. Yeah, he's like, you know, when you first of all, since the very first audition, we had such a trust and chemistry and camaraderie between us that just is fate. Like, it's just how it is. And then when you go through something, like when you create something and then years pass and it becomes this thing, and then we had to do all the press together, like, there was no one else who got as close to understanding what that process was like, because Oren didn't do that stuff with us. So, you know, Micah was really like my buddy and all of that. And so he is like my friend and my brother and my like creative soulmate in certain ways. Like, it's really, he'll always be in my life for sure.
Oh, I
so
love
sometimes we'll go like months and not hang out, and then other times we talk and hang out all the time. So it goes in waves, but it's one of those friendships where it doesn't really matter, because whenever we tap in, we're there, you know.
No, that's great.
Those are the best friendships.
It's also like you said, because it was just the two of you in this whole thing together, like if you hadn't like vibed, how uncomfortable and horrible that would be, because you're going through this entire movie where you're improv, creating a relationship and going through all the press together. So it's really cool to hear like that you guys got along so well, you know.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the trust that Micah and myself and Oren had when we were filming, I think we all came at it with open hearts. And so we all had a lot of trust for each other. And that was just kind of shared and grew, and that bonded us. And then that kind of led over into our experiences in the sequels together and the press and all the other stuff. But we still, like, the three of us, like, Oren lives in New Zealand now with his beautiful family and sun-filled beaches
mansion
and whatever. Yeah, but we still have that, like, we'll email or you know, he'll check in about something, and it's like that little triangle of trust is there, and it's never going anywhere. And that's a really special thing that not everyone gets to experience. So I'm super
that's
grateful.
awesome. So look, we have to talk about the ending of the first one before we move past the first one, because apparently, so what we heard in the documentary and just through research is that, so the original ending was that after you were possessed and killed Micah, that you got shot by the police, right?
Yes.
But then we also read there was an alternate ending where you kill Micah and then you slit your own throat.
Yes.
Is that true? That is true.
Yes.
Did you film that?
Yes. So the original one was the cops, where like I go to my character goes downstairs and is down there for like days, and you see the time speed up, and then you hear the friend come over and say, "Oh my God!" And then you see the cops come, and then and I'm upstairs by then. And the cops come up with and then I snap out of it. I'm holding a knife and I snap out of it, and I'm like wondering where Micah is, and I get up and they get scared and they shoot me.
And in true cop manner, they shoot before thinking.
Very timely.
We were ahead of our time. Maybe not. We were actually probably in the middle of our time. And then we shot the Katie kills Micah, comes upstairs, slits her own throat in front of the camera thing. And I think those are the only two we filmed until we got the notes from Steven Spielberg to do a change up. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. So then, we learned the documentary that obviously a very little known filmmaker, Steven Spielberg,
right.
Just an up and comer,
not really known for much, saw it. And he was the one who suggested that you should survive. So then does that mean we can literally thank him for you being in the sequels?
Yeah. And that means I have thanked him for that. I always promised myself, because we never met him or anything. He gave notes and wasn't there, but I always promised myself if I ever had the opportunity to meet him, I would thank him for what he did for our film, getting it kind of some attention, changing the ending, it changed my life, And Paramount turned 100 years old a handful of years ago. And they had this big fancy photo that they took, like a yearbook photo, right? And I was invited to go, which was insane. So it's me in this giant sound studio on the lot with like 100 of the most iconic filmmakers and actors ever. Like a handful of Paramount like handlers running around, and me. It was an experience that I can't even like put into words, but I was too shy to talk to anyone. Tried to talk to John Cryer. John Cryer, if you're listening, I'm sorry I was so awkward.
Ducky.
It was like George Clooney, Harrison Ford. That's who I was standing around, right? And I see John Cryer and I'm like, Ducky, I can talk to John Cryer. Like, I was just like, Katie, you're not going to sit in the corner this entire time. So I look beautiful. My hair, I'm wearing a pretty dress and everything. And I like get my courage up and I walk over to John Cryer and I say, "Hi, I'm Katie." And he turns and he goes, "Hi, I'm John." And I went, and then I just walked away.
Oh!
Just walked away.
I've talked to him because I was a security guard on 2.5 Men. He's there. I don't want to talk about me, but I'm just saying.
Wow. I mean, you had more courage. And I just walked away and I was like, "Katie, what are you doing?" Anyway, long story short, I saw Steven Spielberg there and I was like, I will regret this till the end of my days. And so there was another actor there that I knew, Bruce Greenwood, who I did a show with Steven Spielberg. And we walked up, he was talking to Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh my God.
And Steven Spielberg turns around and he goes, Oh, Leo, this is Bruce and this is Katie. And he was like, "This is Bruce Greenwood. He's on blah, blah show. This is Katie Featherston. She was in Paranormal Activity." And I'm like, "Oh, did that just happen?" And then Leonardo DiCaprio kind of looks at me and he's got like this fake e-cigarette in his hand and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's where I recognize you." And I was like, I recognize you from Titanic. Just like my world is ending. And I shook his hand and I just told him, I was like, "I always promised myself I would thank you if I had the opportunity. And I have a lot of gratitude for what you did for our film." And he just looked at me in the eyes and he said, "You know what, Katie? I didn't do you any favors. It was a good movie."
Wow.
I'm going to start crying.
I'm on the edge. By the way, I was on the edge of my seat because I was like, "Wait, did she talk to him? Did she not?" You really set that up well.
When you started, I was like, "I don't think she met him."
I was like, "I don't know if she talked to him or not."
I did.
So you did, and that is such a great full circle. That's such a great full circle moment.
It was a really, beautiful moment.
This is the reason people get on planes and buses and drive here for stories like this, and you lived it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I love that you want to, like, you know, so then there's the crazy story of how I guess DreamWorks wanted to remake the film or considered remaking the film with like well-known actors and a bigger budget before they released it theatrically. But then they had the test screening where everybody just was so scared they like walked out and loved it. And we've heard that story. But what I wanted to know from you is that, like, how much were you kept in the loop when that was being considered? Did you know like they were maybe going to remake it? And were you like, we spent all this time doing this and you're going to just remake it without us?
Yeah, so we were at Slam Dance, and that's when we found out that they were going to get the movie, but they wanted to put real actors in the movie, which is like, oh, really, y'all? And Oren was really torn about it. You know, he talked to us about it, and it was this conversation between the three of us about he didn't want to feel like he was leaving us behind. He didn't want to leave us behind. Also, what was best for the movie. And we were all, and, you know, and I remember just feeling like every single step of this way, it has happened the way it's supposed to happen. Like, you know, I've just like to hold on tight doesn't feel like the right thing to do. Like, let's just allow it. Let's just walk through this open door. We'll see where it takes us. Nothing could ever change our experience making the film, even if they make another one. Like, you know, it was just kind of like, well, let's just, you know, let's see what happens. And so Jason Blum took the deal, but put a little caveat in there saying there had to be a screening that the execs went to. And so that happened and people were walking out, but it was because they were so scared. And then the studio was like, oh, let's not spend money to put real actors in this. Let's just go with what we have. So it all worked out.
So who would you, if they had done it, who would you have wanted to play you? Because I think Nicole Kidman.
I think Kristen Wiig.
I think she's younger than me, but she probably would have been too young at the time. But Mae Whitman, who is one of my favorite actresses. I think she's so underrated. I think she is so unbelievably talented. And I would put her in everything if I could. I think she's great. Wow.
Yeah. Was she, she would have been, because she
would have been like a kid back then.
I was going to say like a teenager back then.
Yeah, she would have been too young. But listen, if they were going to remake it now, like put Mae Whitman in.
No.
So you have like, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009 is when it actually is released to the public. What, I mean, like, do you just like wait through all that? And like,
when was the first time you saw it?
With a big audience? Like
because, I think
it came out in... did it come out in 2009?
I think it's 2009 wide release.
Yes. Sorry, I was 23. Okay, so I was 23 years old. It came out in 2000. We filmed it in 2006. It came out in 2009. There we go. Yeah. So it came out in 2009. You're right.
So when was the first time that you saw it on the big screen, and what were your thoughts? Because I think it was one at a film festival. Did you see it
with an audience?
I saw it before it came out in wide release. We saw it at the Screamfest Film Festival, which would have been in like 2007 or 2008. And yeah, my mom flew in. She got us a limo. My friends went, and we all like went. You know, we drove to the Chinese theater and watched it. And I remember, at that time I had seen the movie so many times that I couldn't remember if it was scary anymore. It was like I'm so desensitized to it, And I remember being so blown away by how engrossed the audience was and how like the keys dropping like freaked everyone out. There were tiny moments that I didn't even register anymore that people were super into. And then, that was wild. It was really cool.
Because I mean, flash forward to October 2009 when it got like the wide release, and it ends up being #1 opening weekend, beating Saw 6, like an established, horror franchise. And I'm just wondering, how shocked were you, A, that it even got a wide release, considering its humble beginnings, and B, that it became so successful so quickly? Yeah,
it was like it was a few years of not knowing what, if anything, would happen. And then it was kind of this building up, and kind of this ball started kind of rolling down the hill quicker and quicker towards the end, where it was like, a couple of cities here, LA, New York, and then it was college towns. And, it kind of built and built. And then overnight they were like, hey, it's going to be a wide release. And then it was the #1 movie. I hadn't even left my waitressing job. I had turned in my 2 weeks, but I was the kind of person who was like, well, I'll finish out my 2 weeks. And so I was still waiting tables. People were watching the movie and then walking across City Walk to come like eat pasta, and I was their server. It was like a very wild and weird time. And honestly, too wild and too huge to be able to comprehend at the moment. I think I was just sort of along for the ride. Now I kind of go,
ask you about Buca di Beppo. I was like, what were those final 2 weeks like?
I mean, I know you have the story that someone, was it like every day people were recognizing you?
There was like that last weekend that I worked there. It was like, hey, you look a lot like the, yep. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you need more Parmesan cheese?
I know. I was going to say, can I recommend the lasagna?
And it's still standing. Do you ever just go back and get a buca de beppo?
I have not. I have many amazing memories, and I met some incredible people there. And I remember being towards the end, and like somehow before I knew paranormal was going to hit, just somehow knowing like this phase is going to end soon. Yeah. So how can I soak up the goodness of this, knowing that I'll never have to do this again and I'll never be back? Like this will end. Everything ends. So what can I be grateful for in this right now? And I spent my last couple of months there being so excited to not wait tables, but also so deeply appreciating the good people and the good parts of it. But I have not been back. It's not my most favorite food. My boyfriend is Italian and he will not step foot. He's like, I will not. But I have walked past it many times. I have been to Universal City Walk many times.
Yeah, Universal's cleaned up. I'm not joking.
Just like North Hollywood.
You know what?
North Hollywood is cute now, y'all.
Well, okay, so I know now you don't need to get into specifics on this, but I know that you and Micah were originally only paid $500 for this, which is like mind-blowing. But please tell me you guys were able, like after it was wide released, you were able to kind of renegotiate and get paid more money.
Oren is an incredibly kind and man full of integrity. So we had a contract and basically it was like, hey, if a miracle happened, you guys get to be a part of the miracle too. So it did, and we were. And he could have, it wasn't an ironclad contract that we signed in blood with. It was just a piece of paper. but he honored it because that's who he is. And that's why the project is what it is because of who he is and who we are and that energy that we had. So yeah, we're doing okay.
Yeah, he seems super likable in the documentary.
And he also calls it like it is, wasn't there a part in the documentary who was like, gotta milk that cash cow or something?
Yeah, he does.
Something it's like, he's always been that way where he will just call it like he sees it. And I really appreciate that about him.
He in the documentary, he came off really humble, really sweet. Joe told us he was great. You've told us he was great. So I'm sure he's great.
He is.
So, I mean, okay. So how soon after Paranormal Activity was released did you find out that they wanted to make a sequel? And did they always envision having Katie and Micah in the sequel?
I felt like, I don't really remember truly the exact time, but it felt like it was kind of floating around immediately. Like as soon as it hit and it made all that money, everybody, it was like kind of like, oh wait, we might be doing this again, which is wild. But it was pretty soon because they started filming the next summer. So it wouldn't have been that long. And I think I think the idea was always to have us in it because without us, it would have been a total reboot. So they wanted to keep the audience coming along for the ride. Yeah.
And I was just going to say now for listeners who, and maybe it's been a while since you've seen it, even though the focus of the sequel isn't on Katie and Micah, you do have a pretty sizable role in it because it's kind of like a prequel parallel story involving what was happening to Katie's sister, Christy, and her family before the demon was unleashed on the two of you. But how did the experience of shooting the sequel differ from the original? Did it feel like a much bigger studio production? Was there an actual script?
There was no script. There were, I think, sides or pages of like ideas, sort of, because as soon as the circle gets bigger than one director and two actors that can work pretty efficiently, you've got to have some sort of structure, and it was a studio film. So it took some time to figure out how to make an independent movie with a studio kind of capacity because they're not used to making independent films. But they have SAG rules. Like all of a sudden we had lunch breaks and restrictions and things. And all of a sudden I was in the union, which I hadn't been before. So there was lots of different things like that. But overall it was, everybody really, really like dove in and did their best. And so there was more structure to it, but we still improvised a bunch and they also were kind of figuring out how to do one of these. So we would kind of film in rounds. So we would film for a couple of weeks. They'd go back, edit the movie together, figure out the holes, come back, we'd film for another 2 weeks, and we did this for months. So they have enough footage for like 9 films. I'm sure.
Oh,
well,
wow.
another thing I was gonna. Well, speaking of like alternate footage, something that we saw on IMDb, and now IMDb isn't always the most trustworthy, but it said that there was also an alternate ending in this film where okay, so at the end of this film, for listeners if you don't remember, possessed Katie comes in, snaps the neck of her brother-in-law, kills her sister, and steals her 1-year-old nephew Hunter. But in this alternate ending, it said that you also snapped the neck of 1-year-old Hunter. Now, was that ever filmed? That sounds very
I don't remember I don't remember
snapping a toddler's neck.
I definitely didn't do that, but I don't have any memory of even simulating killing a baby. I don't think that.
When I read that, I was like, I can't even imagine anyone thinking that was a good idea.
I mean, everything they put on the internet's true.
Yeah, there were big discussions about the dog. Like, we can't let the dog be hurt because we would lose the audience.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if we're going to lose the audience over a dog, we for sure are going to look like, no, I don't.
Gosh.
I think that's listen, maybe I've blocked it out. I was so traumatized, but I don't remember that.
Tim's like, do you need someone to snap a kid's
Hey,
neck? I'm here.
don't reveal that I don't like kids.
No. Okay. So moving on, because I know, there's a lot of movies and we're going through them quickly, but so Paranormal Activity 3 comes out another year later after part 2. And this time the story focuses on the childhood of Katie and Christy. And, but you and Sprague Graydon, who plays Christy, you do have a scene in the beginning that's a new scene that introduces everything before it goes into past. I was just wondering, with the third one, were you upset that they didn't do kind of like a sequel to 1 and 2, or did you like the whole idea of exploring the children?
I think it was a really creative idea. I think it was out of the kind of the left field. Like, I don't think it's something people would have expected, and to make the sort of visuals and the technology of the camera and all that stuff kind of new for an audience. I wouldn't have initially thought, hey, let's go back to the 80s. So I actually thought it was great. I would have loved, and I think I still get messages. It's so sweet. I would love to know at some point what happened to my character, and is she still possessed, and is she going to snap out of it and like realize that Micah's gone? Like, I would love to know all of those answers.
Yeah.
But I definitely at the time wasn't worried about it or anything. I thought the 80s kid thing was cool.
Did you get to meet the girl who played you as a child?
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, did you give her any tips on like, okay, this is a Katie Featherston movie?
No, in fact, I was like, you make it you. This is not me. This is a character. So no. I do remember like talking about people getting confused. So casting they were trying to cast the role of young Katie's mom, right? And they asked for a picture of my own mom. And I was like, why? Just cast a dark-haired woman. Like, find the best actress, dye her hair if you need to, but like just find a woman who, like, it doesn't need to look like my mom. This isn't a documentary about my life.
I know.
They're like, but we're using your
They're
name.
like, but wait, we still think
it doesn't
it's you.
like it's like it's really like I never and you know what, y'all, I did it. I gave it to him because I was like, because I felt so like I gotta be a team player. But even I remember being on a train in Chicago going, this is so invasive. Like, why do they need a picture of my mom? Anyway, they found an amazing actress who does not look like my mom. My mom's beautiful, but it's like they found the best actress, which is at the end of the day what they needed to do.
2 random things about part 3, and then move on to 4, because the guy who plays your mom's boyfriend in it looks weirdly like Micah, and I don't know why, but like
He does have a similar,
random.
Micah's a handsome guy.
Very handsome
He's
guy,
a
yeah.
handsome guy,
And then
yeah.
second question, did they ever tell you what happened to Katie and Christy's dad? Like, do we ever know? Like, the real biological dad?
I don't know. I mean, I know what my story was for my character before other things got written and put in movies. But I don't know what the actual like canon is.
Well, tell us. What was your story of what happened?
I mean, my story was like my family was fine. Like my parents, like they were still married, and like in the movie, actually, I don't know if it made it into the first film. It might. I call my parents and I ask about the photo. Is that the movie? I don't know.
I feel like it is.
I don't remember a phone
I think
call.
it might cut after, and I'm like crying in the bed and looking at the photo. But the earlier part of that scene is I'm on the phone with my dad, I think, being like, "Hey, I just found this photo in the attic." So that was my story. But then once you let the world get bigger and things are written and other creativity comes into it, then that has to be let go, and then the world that is created is the world Paranormal Activity.
And then moving on to Paranormal Activity 4, which came out another year later. So that was a true sequel to parts 1 and 2. And it involves, a new family who lives across the street from Katie and her new adopted son, Robbie. And then this new family finds out that their adopted son, Wyatt, is actually the kid who used to be your nephew, Hunter. And I'm just wondering, do you have any idea why they didn't just make the adopted son you had in that Hunter versus making it the kid across the street and giving you like a new child? Like, was there any thinking behind that? Or am I looking too much into this?
I'm going to need you to get a whiteboard out and diagram.
It just seemed unnecessarily confusing because it's like you have a son who were all like, oh, that's the kid she stole at the end of 2, but it's not. And it's the kid in the new family who's the kid. I just didn't know if they ever told
Where did that other kid come from? I don't. Maybe I've just gone on a rampage of stealing adorable young babies. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't have an answer to that, nor did I have a part in making those decisions. I had a lot of fun making that movie. Henry and Rel are phenomenal human beings, super fun guys. They directed the 3rd and the 4th. Mm-hmm. I don't remember that. And I was in that one quite a bit.
Yeah, you have a pretty big role in that. I mean, but you're all demon Katie there.
Yeah. I think I'm like creepily pretending to be human in one scene, but really it's like, yeah.
And also in part 4 is Catherine Newton. Did you catch her in The Freaky?
I was too busy watching her in Big Little Lies.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
What was she like back then? Because I know that was toward the beginning of her career. Now she's kind of carved a name for herself in horror.
It was very, very early days for her. She was great. She was very into golf, which I think she still is. And she was beautiful and fun and easy to work with and very laid back. But they were for sure like in it for the long haul. Like she was definitely not dabbling in acting. Like she had goals, which was cool, and it was cool to see, and she had her mom with her, and it was cool to see what that looks like at that age, when you have like someone with you who's kind of there to guide you and everything. It was neat.
Stage mom. I wish I had one.
But stage mom in like a really cool way, like
a nice stage mom.
Like when you hear a stage mom, there's a horrible stigma.
Yeah. Well, so not then comes the final Paranormal Activity film that you appeared in, which was Paranormal Activity: The Marked Ones, and both you and Micah are in the final scene, and it's kind of cool because like they have one of the characters go through like this portal and revisits that final scene from the original film, which was such a cool like callback. Mm-hmm. And I was where you murder Micah, and that was also something we never saw in the original film. So just what was it like reuniting with Micah and revisiting just that whole like the energy and just everything that happened in the original film, or at least the ending scene?
And did you actually film in Oren's house?
Yes, we did.
Oh, you went back to the house.
It was a very full circle thing because I at the time thought, thought that would be the last. I don't know why I thought that would be the last film. But I did, or maybe I thought it would be the last, I guess because they were getting so far out that I thought this is going to be the last one, I'm ever in or whatever. But it was very full circle because just like we did in the first film, Micah and I got into my car in LA and we drove the 3 hours to San Diego and we pull up at the house and the costuming thrones me in ill-fitting pajamas and we filmed the scene and in the room that we did it before. And I think Oren was there around the corner. I can't remember if he was there, but he was definitely there in spirit if he wasn't. And it was wild to be back in that space with so many movies in between and to see where we had started and where we had come. So it was really, in that way, it was really special. It was fun.
Give you the closure, the Paranormal Activity closure.
Yeah, it was just very, it was just, it was kind of two worlds in one. Like for Micah and I to carpool down like we always had and to be in that kitchen and, that house that I lived in for a week, we lived in together and like, it was just fun. It was fun.
That's really cool.
Oh, I love that.
Have you seen the 6th or the 7th movies in the series at all? The Ghost Dimension and Next of Kin?
I've seen the 6th one. Micah has seen the 7th one. I have not seen the 7th one yet.
Thoughts on the 6th one? You can be totally honest.
I think that
they messed up.
I think this is what I think. This is my honest take. I think there was a lot that they pulled from the first film that, there's like, oh, here's the beat where she goes outside and she's possessed. Here's the, and a lot of that could work. I wished I had known the characters more.
Uh-huh.
I wish I had known them because in my opinion, if I didn't matter. It's like when we were talking about Watcher before we were before we were on mic, but it's like, if I don't care about her in that film, I'm not really going to care if she's being watched. You know, you've got to like really. And so I wished I had, like, there was a girl that was in the house, like she was a neighbor, but I never totally knew who she was, like what her role was. So I think there were a lot of good things that worked about it. I thought there was some cool tech stuff that was fun.
It makes a huge difference. I mean, watching the film. No, I mean, just like if caring about the person on screen.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I was like 3D.
In 3D. If I don't have a movie in 3D, forget it.
3D.
I've got to know, did they ask you to be a part of 6 or did you say no, or did they just want to go a different way? Or
no, I think that they were just branching out. Yeah, it was never. I kind of was like, I wonder if I'll get a call for this. But they just went a new way, which is
mistake.
I agree.
Well, you know.
I mean, I think we're big.
Know, look at Jamie Lee Curtis, 1978. She's back in it. How, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I don't think you're out.
Yeah. I feel much the same way that I did when we thought they were going to recast the movie, which is don't hold on tight. Like, just allow it to be what it's going to be. I'm like doing so much in my life and I'm so fulfilled. That door will always be open for me if they find if they find a exciting and reasonable and meaningful way for my character to come back. I would always be open to that. And if that never happens, I will be their biggest cheerleader from afar. And, you know, also franchises never die. Like this will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to ask. I mean, is your favorite Paranormal Activity the original?
There's no way it couldn't be. It's like a life-changing.
That's a dumb question.
Life-changing.
But okay,
the most creative
that was Matt's
thing.
Question.
No, actually, the question, Katie, the question was, and I can show you because it's written down. It literally says, I assume the original is your favorite, but which of the sequels do you like best after the first one?
I think probably the third. I think it was really. I think the little girls are great. I mean, it would be the second or the third. I think I remember that scene. You know, I guess if I'm thinking back to I guess there is the scene in the kitchen with all the. I will say this: I was so jealous that Sprague got to get drugged down the stairs because I had like really tried Oren. I'd really tried to convince Oren to let me get drugged down the stairs on the first one, and he was like, "We don't have the insurance for that. That's way too dangerous. No." And then they had the budget and the insurance and the capability to let Sprague do it in the second one, and I was like, "Oh, it looks so cool." To answer I think the third one. That's my gut answer. Yeah.
No, that works.
Although I do like the prequel sequel aspect of the second. I thought that was very creative.
I did too. And I also thought, you know how sometimes a sequel comes out to a horror movie and it just feels tacked on, but then there's other ones that like, it feels like a natural connection to the first, like this really felt connected. Like, because
I agree.
In the first one, you do mention your sister and that it was affecting you guys. And, you know, it's kind of parallel, and then it's like, oh, this is why the demon goes after Katie because her brother-in-law sent it over, you know, which is good that you snapped his neck. So, I
mean, don't do mean things with demons, you know. Like,
I was going to ask you, have you ever done a horror convention?
I have. I've done I wouldn't say quite a few of them, but a handful of them over the past couple of years. Micah and I go to them together sometimes. It's been a while. We haven't really since the pandemic. I think we have like maybe 2 next year. But they're so fun.
What's the most common thing you get asked by fans?
Oh gosh. I get asked, what was this like? Was it scary filming it? Did something scary happen on set? Are you and Micah really dating? Is he still like things like that?
Is he dead?
Is he dead? I was never possessed. We've never dated, and nothing scary happened except it was scary how fun it was. That's it.
That's funny.
I wish I could give people an answer and be like, yeah, one night it was actually really spooky, but it was just so fun. You know,
that's great. And then I just to wrap things up and thank you. This has been so much fun. Seriously,
yeah.
Kate, we're so happy that we had you on, and this has been such a treat for us, being fans of this series, being fans of yours. And you answered this, but like if the powers that be asked you back to reprise the role of Katie in like let's say part 8, I'm assuming because you said you would definitely reprise the role.
I mean, yeah, that door would always be open. I don't know that I would I don't know if I could say yes, for sure. Yeah. I'm in grad school right now. Like I've got so much fun stuff going on, but it would always be something that I would heavily consider and want to make work. If there was a meaningful reason for me to be in the film. Good, not to just tack me in there, but if there was like a way if that would make the film truly better, then yes. You know,
because I we saw Next of Kin, and it was very different. It was such a departure from the series that it didn't feel like it should be part of the series. And I don't know,
it could have just been like
Barnyard Massacre.
Yeah,
but it just didn't feel like. And as true horror fans that love like continuity in series, like you, like we said in the intro, you really are the face of this series. I mean, you and Micah kind of put the foundation.
Your journey.
It has become your journey. So we as fans would absolutely love to see you back in a movie. We want Joe Bandelli to direct.
Yeah. Let's do that. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Glad Joe talked to me at that party. I was sitting by myself eating a hamburger.
He was at the premiere of Next of Kin, and that's how he met Joe. And then we asked him on our podcast, and then this all led to Katie. And see, fate always works out well.
Oh my gosh. I love that.
So we are putting that in the universe because we'd love to see you back. So
I like that. We'll manifest that. We'll make it happen.
So we have one final question for you, and we asked this to every single person we interview. And what is one thing that you can tell us about your experience working on, let's say, the first Paranormal Activity that you've never told any other interviewer, podcaster, convention panel, anyone? It can be
Micah.
That you've never told Micah. It can be a little thing. It can be just something you've never told, that you didn't tell Joe Bandelli during the documentary filming, just something you've never told about your experience working on the film.
I don't know if I've told this story. I know that if I have not told it very many times. I might have told Joe Bandelli. I don't know if it was it definitely wasn't didn't make the cut. But in the first film, now keep in mind, it was my first year out of college. I was probably less than a year out of college, right? And I had fallen madly in love with this guy 2 weeks before I moved to LA. We met, stayed up all night talking. It was magical and romantic. We fall madly in love. We date for 2 weeks. I move to LA. We date long distance. And he's supposed to come out to LA. Then he tells me he can't. And he wants to go to DC and be a whatever. And I was devastated, and we break up. Oh. Hard cut to I'm gonna go film this movie. And we had only been broken up for not that long. I'm gut-wrenchingly heartbroken over this guy. And
I know where this is going.
Well, and so we are in the middle of filming, and Oren's like, Katie, I think we need a scene where you really like lose it, where you're like crying and you're like at your wit's end, and you're, and I as an actress have always had a hard time like crying on cue. I grew up in Texas. I wasn't allowed to cry. Like that was like kind of a tough thing for me to overcome as an actor. And I was like, listen, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to give it my all. And I was like, okay. I was like, Oren, can I have like 20 minutes? And he was like, yeah, totally. Take 20 minutes. And I was like, okay. And I went into the bedroom, shut the door, and I called my ex-boyfriend. And I was like, listen, this is going to sound weird, but I'm filming a movie, and I need you to remind me of all the good things, of the reasons why we loved each other. And he was like, okay. And we were friendly. Like we weren't like, we broke up because of distance. We weren't, and so he just started telling me all of these like good things. And I was like, okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Click. And I was like, okay, let's film it. Can we film it now? Let's film the scene now. And then we filmed the scene. We filmed the scene, and yeah.
That is an incredible. Wait, I'm trying to, because I think I know the scene, because when you're it's toward the end, when you just have kind of like,
I'm like crying in the hallway, and Micah runs up and holds me. Yeah.
So that's what got you. Wow, that is a great story.
That is a great story.
Do you now have him on speed dial for any other role you have to cry?
You're like, hey,
I definitely don't. He is, I'm married with a couple of kids, and a lovely chapter in my life, but no longer a presence in my current life. And if I were to call anyone, it would be the love of my life, my boyfriend, Joe.
But he talks too loud.
He does talk loudly. To the listeners, I could hear him on the phone with one of his buddies through my earphones. So I had to text him and ask him to speak more softly.
Wait, I forgot one last thing I wanted to give you time to talk about before we go is your podcast. Because we checked out your podcast. It is called A to Z with Clint and Katie. And it is Katie and her friend Clint, who's a musician. And they're talking about, now correct me if I'm wrong, but they're talking about different topics that each start with a letter of the alphabet. And they're telling like their experience with, like, A was auditions, and
B was the Bachelor.
Yes, he was like cassettes and stuff like that. And I'm so, but please talk about and tell our listeners where they can check it out on social media and stuff like that.
Yeah, just on Instagram, it's at Katie and Clint. And then You can just look up A to Z with Clint and Katie on any of your, podcast listening vehicles. But yeah, we just kind of go through the alphabet, attack it one letter at a time, and talk about things that we're excited about. Me coming from this place of being an actress and being interested in like psychology and the world, and him coming from this place of being a songwriter and guitar player and touring musician. And we're pals. We've been pals for like a decade, so it's really an excuse for us to hang out with some structure. And I'm having so much fun with it. And we have lots of good episodes out. And then we have little like happy hour hangout episodes where we just check in. We read listener emails. We give shout outs to our Patreon supporters. And we have lots of good stuff coming up the pipeline. So
that's so cool. And we have listened to a few episodes, and you guys have just such a great camaraderie. Like you can tell you've been friends for a while, which I hope that Tim and I, because we've been friends for like a decade too. So we have no chemistry.
Get away from me.
You guys are oozing chemistry. But all we have to do is put one kid in there, and then Tim will just shut down.
That's when I just fall asleep.
He's gonna find that alternate ending when you snap the kid's neck.
I would never hurt children.
No, but please, listeners, check out A to Z with Clint and Katie, because it is, you guys, it's just very natural to conversation. Like when I was listening, I kind of felt like I was there with you, and then realized,
you're not.
I'm sitting here alone crying.
We want everybody who listens to feel like they're hanging out with us and they're friends with us, and then if they want, they can email us or be a Patreon supporter and give us show idea suggestions. Like it's gonna he has a couple other podcasts, and they've really developed like a following, and there's like a very cool like group mentality, and he tours with them and meets listeners and stuff. So we would love to get it to that level where we really have
awesome.
You
something
have
going.
a like listening to your podcast, because I listened to 2 episodes. You're very relatable. I mean, I can't relate to meeting Steven Spielberg, but I mean, like,
I can barely relate to that.
But like, there is something just so friendly about your voice.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that. That makes my heart happy. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you so much. Seriously, Katie, we've had so much fun. Much fun.
What a great way to spend an afternoon. I'm super thankful for you guys.
Thank you so much. You are an absolute star and a gem. And thank you.
This was so fun. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, cool. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. We've got an exciting October plan for you, because Happy Horror Time's going paranormal.
That's right. We've got 2 new interviews coming out this month with the 2 stars of the original Paranormal Activity film, Katie Featherston and Micah Sloat.
And keeping up with this theme, our bonus episode for October is a look back at the first 2 Paranormal Activity movies.
So make sure to sign up to be a patron at www.patreon.com/happyhorrortime so you can access that episode along with all our other bonus perks. If we get to 50 patrons, we're going to start releasing 2 bonus episodes per month instead of 1.
And remember to follow all our social pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Happy Horror Time to get all of our updates.
You can also contact us directly by emailing happyhorrortime@gmail.com. We love hearing from listeners.
I'm Tim Murdoch.
And I'm Matt Emmert. And we hope you have a happy horror time.